call the meeting to order.
All right, so we're going to call this meeting to order, and we are starting at 4:17.
All right. This is Meet and Confer Session 2. Our agenda for the day is that we're going to get into introductions. We will be speaking about Proposal 5, which is the COVID sick leave proposal. We're also speaking about Proposal 3, which is the $3,000 ESSER retention stipend for the 22-23 school year. Proposal 2, which is a proposed $3,000 end of school year payout. And then Proposal 7, which has been approved, but we just kind of wanted to wrap up the loose ends and also thank district for their collaboration on that one. And that one is the 3 PECTA representatives on the Certified Needs Assessment Committee. And then we will talk about our deliverables for Monday and close out. And then something else I wanted to bring into the room today that we're trying, and I spoke with you yesterday, Dr. Diaz, about this, is that we're trying to do a more live negotiation. So we are open to hearing real-time feedback and then editing our language at the table as we speak. So if you have any additions or subtractions or anything that you want us to be aware of in that regard, that would be wonderful. Okay, so I will introduce myself. My name is Marnie Burris. I am the PECTA Vice President, Meet and Confer Co-Chair, and most proudly, I am a 3rd grade teacher at Emerson Elementary School.
I am Diana Antone. I am co-chair for this Meet and Confer, as well as secretary for PECTA, and I teach 7-8 science over at Lowell.
I'm Melissa Montagluski. I'm a member at large for PECTA, and then I am the very proud social worker at Dunbar.
I am Haley Honeman. I am a proud PECTA member and the drama teacher K-8 at Herrera Elementary.
All right, so we are going to start out. Oh, I'm sorry. We're just going to not let you introduce yourselves at all. Obviously, you're the stars of this show. Sorry.
Excuse me. My name is Gina Millsaps, and I am the very proud principal over at Paul Lawrence Dunbar School.
Vic Diaz, I'm the Director of Human Resources.
Alicia Zelvis, the Director of Exceptional Student Services.
And unfortunately, Mr. Arlone on the Meet and Confer team on our side has a sick kid at home, so he had to leave school early today.
Okay, so we are going to start with Proposal 5. So just for clarification before we go into it, we are using contingency language. That's if the numbers go up and a new variant comes, and in accordance with current CDC guidelines, then we are proposing the following. So PECTA is proposing to collaborate with the Phoenix Elementary School District to commit to setting aside funds available for the purpose of extending COVID sick leave in the event the pandemic continues in the 2022-2023 school year. In order to use, staff or immediate family members must have a positive test result through PCR testing.
And we also wanted to bring into the room that we are extremely grateful to the district for being leaders in extending the COVID sick leave a second year. And we realized that this would, in the event that it becomes necessary, be the 3rd extension of this leave. So we are mindful of that. And we're very grateful to work in a district that recognizes the importance of being able to take that kind of leave.
Is there any other data you were going to present from this?
So we did receive anecdotal data from members. We had 13 members in total who reported back to us about having to use personal leave when a child or another household member that they're responsible for care of was ill. The average was about 10 hours of leave, which doesn't sound too bad, but when I'm thinking about looking forward to next year, right, and we know that we're going to have mass exodus from teaching. So we're looking at having quite a few new teachers, right? And I think about my first year as a teacher. If I had gotten COVID as a first-year teacher, that would have pretty much wiped out any skills I had. So we want to be mindful of that, and just thinking too, like what a great benefit that would be to kind of draw teachers in, right? Like this is a district that is so caring for its teachers that we offer this, and you know, what a great job. Especially, you know, if our salaries aren't always as competitive. I think it's a great draw.
We also heard from AEA that Cartwright, Isaac, and Osborne have done this.
Okay, I have a huge pile of stuff under your meeting. Yay, but it's nothing exciting.
That's helpful. And is that leave for individuals who test positive? That part of the proposal, or both parts of the proposal, individuals test positive as well as immediate family members test positive?
We want to verify that.
Just which color?
What criterion do you propose that we use to establish what an immediate family member is, and those without immediate family members that would be maybe an individual?
So we primarily focused on, you know, who's living within the household. And so, you know, whether it's your child's, you know, through birth certificates or even just a simple tax form, you know, we're called to state who's living in our current house. And so, you know, we wanted to use that as well as a doctor's note as reference. You know, we're as a primary provider, as the person in charge of your children, you're only the only ones who have permission to take your kid to the doctor anyway. And so that would kind of help verify, like, this truly is your child. This is who's living in your house. In reference to, you know, someone who's an individual, I mean, that kind of does leave it a little bit open. Like, you know, if my father, who doesn't live in my household, has no one, you know, we would have to consider a different aspect to that. But, you know, overall, I think there are methods in which we could accomplish that verification.
I'm sorry, just for clarification, I wasn't at the last meeting. I apologize for that. But when here, just if you could clarify, in extending COVID sick leave in the amount of 80 hours.
Oh,
That was,
go ahead.
oh, we took that out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we also, you know, in our clarification, we stated, you know, in accordance to CDC guidelines, because we are aware that they're changing. You know, I think we're awaiting the governing board to change it to 5. And so we want to work within the proper parameters, but just still have it available.
Clarification on Cartwright, Isaac, and Osborne. It is covering the individual with the positive test.
Thank you. Yeah, so in terms of the proposals that currently exists, excuse me, looking at the first sentence, I think that's reasonable. I think we're a little too. That's okay. I think we're a little too early. Just one of the data points that I would want to share is in looking at proposed changes to the mitigation plan, I reached out to HR directors in about 20 districts in the county, asking if they are tracking student vaccination rates. We know how complicated that is, but I just wanted to see, is there anybody doing it? Of the 20, 13 described COVID in the past tense. They said something to the effect of, we did not track this during the pandemic, as opposed to we have not been tracking this during the pandemic. So I know that a lot of districts are starting to ramp down, and I mean, they've done that before. You know, Creighton School District declared everybody essential workers, and even if you had exposure and you were unvaccinated, they forced you to come back to work. So I'm afraid that it's a little too early right now to know where the pandemic's headed to know if this would be a benefit to continue. But in terms of that contingency language you have in the first sentence, I think that sounds, you know, very reasonable. The second sentence is going to be the one that's way more challenging. Without a precedence in terms of other districts, and again, in terms of just being on a side of this where we're pulling in opposite directions, I think we're looking at overwhelming data we're getting from staff members is they're looking to drop masks requirements. And if that's the case as well, to extend this benefit, it just kind of pulls in 2 different directions. So I think that's what makes the second half of this particularly difficult.
May I ask a question real quick?
Of course.
In your data in terms of making mask optional, did we clarify whether or not like that specific teacher was intending to take their mask off, or are we now not they're not as concerned about their students, but they will remain with their mask off.
Oh, I'm sure we'd find people on all
Mm.
parts of that spectrum
So,
in terms of how they feel.
so
about
let's just say 80% of your teachers say, I'm coming with my mask regardless. I mean, could that potentially still impact the direction? Because now let's say, 100% of your class is now masked, they don't wear their masks. That teacher still contracts COVID. And again, this is all contingency language. What if that new variant pops up? But now masks are optional, and now we don't have COVID care. Like, where does that happen?
Right, right.
And so that's
yeah.
kind of my concern. And I've seen it within my own child's district where, starting the year off, it was completely optional. Comes October, November, it was back to, it's reinforced. Come February, we're back to mask optional. And so it is a back and forth game because we are getting these new variants. And so again, our focus on this is just to be prepared.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
understand with the second sentence with immediate family members, but we also have parents who send our kids, they're at 2 different schools. You've got one in junior high, you've got one in elementary. What if they're on 2 different quarantines? What does a parent do in that situation now? They've got 2 different time periods in which they all of a sudden have to take anywhere from 5 to 10 days off. And that's kind of the position as we're taking. Many of us have multiple children. Some of us are single parents. What opportunities are we opening up for them? And that's, again, where we're coming from.
No, I definitely understand.
Our biggest aim with this proposal, really, and I think Melissa put it best, so I'll just use her verbiage. She said that we're trying to be proactive, not reactive to a situation. So I think it would definitely make us all feel at peace knowing that we have this contingency language, that in the event that this happens, this is the plan. And obviously we're sitting at this table, we're open to negotiating it. So, we're hearing what you're saying, but I think our thought with adding this piece for care for your immediate family or an immediate household member is that it honors our district's philosophy of not seeing through each other, but seeing each other through. And I think that's really been what we've had to do throughout this pandemic. And with this new, BA variant coming, that's absolutely terrifying. We're going to need to do that more than ever.
I would much rather have something than have nothing. And I was very grateful. I did get COVID around the same time you did, Dr. Diaz, when Omicron surge was happening. And knowing that I could take that time and that my school had my back alleviated a lot of stress. And I was able to come back before the full 10 days was allotted to me, which was great.
In terms of for today's meeting, I think getting beyond the contingency language, yes, the first sentence, yes, the second, I don't think we're going to be able to find agreement on that, just with the limited data that we have. If we wanted to table this, we certainly could. I think with every week, we get a little bit more data too. We really get to see, what will happen with these variants. Is this going to re-endemic state? And, yeah.
Okay, so for clarification, there's the possibility of coming to an agreement on this proposal, but without the addition of immediate household.
Yes, I think we need a workshop, and if you want to do that, we can.
Okay.
The contingency language, just to
Sure.
clean that up a little bit, and then turn this from PECDA's proposing to the actual agreement,
Okay,
where the agreement would be that if the, if the pandemic continues, if the CDC continues to consider COVID-19 a pandemic, and that pandemic has mandatory quarantine times in the event of a positive test, that we would be continuing, I would say continuing to collaborate, because I think that from the get-go, we've been at the table together to come up with really thoughtful ways to navigate this,
right.
but continuing to collaborate with administration to extend the COVID sick leave in the 22-23 school year. In terms of setting aside funds and all those different pieces, I think it's a level of detail we don't necessarily need. The only detail we just may need is that we would continue the benefit as it currently exists.
Okay.
So if we were to propose this, and let's just say 2 parts, let's make, we would go back, kind of restate this. Could we potentially do like a 5A where it's a contingency? We have these 5 or 10 days set. if something were to arise. And then if we propose a 5B, where we could table that immediate family piece until more data comes in, or we could continue collaborating maybe after we hit all those other major proposals. Would you be open-minded to that?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, with the Meet and Confer process, you know, we can always say, we're close enough on this, let's just leave that alone. We're not, let's table that, you know, there was only so much time in a meeting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think we can say at this point that there's an A and a B.
Mhm.
And the A, we have general agreement, we just have to workshop the language.
Okay.
Whereas the B is gonna be not able to agree on today.
So we'll go ahead and essentially table our part B, and then again, we'll go ahead and see what, you know, put a little more finesse into the 5A.
So I wonder then if we can do a Monday at 5 o'clock. But if
Sure,
at
yeah.
Monday at 5 o'clock, you sent the language for 5A
Okay.
and 5B.
Sounds good.
If you were to get it sooner, I would be able to Monday at 5 o'clock confirm that, yep, that language looks right.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Are there any other thoughts, questions? All right, so proposal 3 is concerning the $3,000 retention stipend that is to be paid out next school year, the 2022-2023 school year. And we brought this to the table knowing that it was already something that had been approved. And really what we're looking for is just to have it in our language and maybe to talk about some of the details, like when it's paid out. So we are proposing that the amount be paid out in 2 installments, one in August of 2022 and one in January of 2023. And that staff hired at the start of the school year will receive, or that should say the middle, or yeah, the start of the school year, sorry, will receive the installments in January of 2023 and May of 2023. These are proposals, so obviously we are open to negotiation. But our thoughts were mostly that at the beginning of the year, that very first month of school is usually when staff is at their absolute brokest. I don't know how to like put that nicer. I have everyone in the audience. I see heads shaking, so I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. And I think it would be nice to have that just to kind of, you know, be able to make it through that first month back, which is always a very expensive time.
Well, I agree. I tell people all the time, you know, I grew up without health insurance and thankfully a home over my head, but never been poorer than the first month of being a teacher. So yes, I agree. So in terms of this proposal, what we put in the administrative responses is there was a time where we wanted to consider, well, just to kind of back it up a bit, there's ESSER 2 and there's ESSER 3, right? This money is approved in the ESSER 2 grant. The ESSER 3 grants, the funds are just simply much more restrictive. And so to do a stipend like this is not something that's in line with ESSER 3. And so knowing that the $3 million, or not $3 million, $3,000 per teacher is sitting in ESSER 2 right now, we do have the ability to extend that over 2 years. So at one point we did wonder, you know, should we take that 3,000 and cut it into $1,500, not to be paid in January and May, but to be paid in 2022, 23, and another one in 23, 24. We've got more feedback about that. It feels like, nope, 22, 23 is a better place to put all that. But I think one, we want to confirm that with you all, as long as we're discussing it. It's a good time to be discussing it. The second question is with regards to those payouts. You know, this was the first time we've done something like this. Our district was also much more aggressive than others in sort of setting the level for this. Do we prefer to do 3 payments of 1,000? Is 1,500 better? And to your point about timing, one of the concerns last year was that if we put it in the first pay, you know, somebody would get it and then quit. Now that we've sort of jumped off of that bridge and we see it's really a really small jump that didn't happen in January, and it really didn't happen in August either. We may be able to pay it, you know, even sooner than what we're thinking right now, knowing that most people's contracts actually start in July. I don't think we could pay it before your contract starts, But the question would be, could it be in that first check, or could you do a special pay? We do that already with new teacher orientation, where we do a special pay to make sure new teachers don't work for 3.5 or 4 weeks before they get a paycheck. So if we do that for new teachers, I think we could find a way to do it for everybody else as well. So I guess the two questions are, is 1,500 the right? Well, I guess the first one is confirm for us that it's better to do it all in 22, 23. The second is 1,500 the right cut, or should we do it a different way? And then the third, just being, what if we only cut it in 2, what was the timing?
We discussed last night having that at least the first payment come in the first paycheck, and I feel like the general consensus was that first paycheck, having all or half would be beneficial.
I almost want to ask, and I'm saying this both to both sides, our side as well. I almost want to ask to, continue to talk about this, but maybe give us some time to take it back to our members, because I would hate to sit here and say, oh yeah, like this is what we want, and then get like a million text messages later telling me that was the wrong thing to say. Because
Absolutely.
I think that having it actually in July might be really nice for some people. I mean, I know, like I said that, and like you've said to your own point, Dr. Diaz, about that first, like those weeks leading up to that first paycheck are like it's rough. So maybe to have that beforehand, that could alleviate some of that pressure that you feel going into those first couple weeks of school. So I would like to table it and take it back to our membership to ask for their thoughts and what they would like.
I think it's reasonable. I just throw one more dynamic in. There's also a hint that they have to be the same size. So to your point, Haley, about like all or half, you could do 2/3 and 1/3. You could do the first 1,000 up front and then chop up the next 2,000 in smaller things. We know from talking to staff members that the more consistent the pay is, the better. At the same time, we do want people to 100,000,000% understand this is it.
Yes.
This is the unless there's an ESSER 4, that this would expire at the end of the year.
I also just wanted to clarify something that was said that was not true. The stipend is coming out of ESSER 3. I'm looking at the application.
I'll have to go back and you're looking at applications on ED's website.
Yes.
Okay.
And just to clarify, Dr. Diaz, I'm looking at the responses that you provided us last week. So it states that as well as across more payments throughout the year. And is that in reference to potentially additional funds, or just like, as you were kind of stating, stretching those funds throughout the next 2 years?
Yeah, the way that's been explained by Dr. Zeep to me is the only thing that would be possible is stretching. In terms of adding funds, the
Okay.
funds are already
So it would
accounted for. Approved.
just be the 3,000 altogether.
Correct.
Okay.
So the 3,000 would move the payout levels of it.
Okay.
I just have another question regarding, so can you share some of the rationale behind the second half where staff hired at the start of the school year would receive the installments until January? Just because, the rationale you shared for teachers returning, I do understand teachers that are returning that have been here for a while definitely should have a reward sooner for their retention. How would this be interpreted for our new staff as well, who we're onboarding new people? We want to retain new recruits. And is January soon enough for people that also may have come from somewhere else, may not have had a job previously coming out of college? Is, when we're talking about those funds, is January soon enough for staff that are new recruits as well?
That's a really great point. And so when we created that language, we were just following the district's model from this year.
Yeah. And so in terms of what the rationale was for doing that was because they were called retention stipends, you had to be retained. And so we couldn't front load the retention stipend for a new person.
Right.
So that's why the January, May, you're getting it on the second, sort of the back end of your retentions.
So it would be the same for this then. We couldn't pay a retention stipend to someone who is brand new to the district.
I can look into the flexibility on that, and see if there's something more that we can do. We wouldn't want to do anything that violates the application as exists, so,
But perhaps we could
but there's
do it
certain
sooner.
details that are not in the application that we get to really decide on.
Mhm.
So I can look into the possibility of doing that. Again, I think part of the concern last year, because this happens, the holiday pay, you get paid 2 weeks during winter break. We will have staff members quit the day they return for winter break, because they know if I quit the day before winter break, I don't get the 2 weeks during winter break, and my insurance will expire at the end of December. But if I quit the first day back, not only do I get the 2 weeks, I get insurance for extra month. So knowing that loophole gets used, that was the hesitation of having the stipends paid too early in January. That's why they were pushed to the third week of January.
Could we?
Knowing just that we're at a point where if you're in, you're in, if you're all in, you're all in. I think it brings down some of the concern on that a bit. And so, I mean, the real concern was that you would get your 1,500 from us and then jump over to another district that made it a signing bonus. And now you would get hired by that district and get their bonus from us. I think we're in a point, like I said, where we can all look at that a little differently. And so I can look into see if the timing of new teachers or new staff has to remain that way. If we were also to do multiples, let's say you were to do 4 in a year, maybe the new staff would miss the first one but could catch the second one. And if the second one happened to be paid out, I don't know, September or October, that would be another way to get it there sooner.
That's what I was wondering. I would propose maybe like how are we going to define retention? Is it, we retain the staff member through the first grading period because we'll be on quarters next year.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that to, a little survival reward. So just, something to consider.
So for this proposal then, what if Monday by 5, Hector were to send the general sense of the number? Monday by 5, I will clarify ESER 2 versus ESER 3 and the possibility of moving new staff earlier than January.
Dick, or Dr. Diaz, I have a question in reference to what you just recently said with that loophole. I believe we were hired at the same time 4 years ago. And within these 4 years, have you seen that loophole used more and more, or have you primarily seen it within the last 2 years?
It's, not having the data in front of me, it's fairly consistent.
Okay.
And in fact, this year it was probably the lowest it's ever been. Again, I think one of the reasons that happened was that we put the retention stipend late in January. So if you hung on for the winter break, well, you'll hang on for the rest of January too. To Director Ellis's point, that whole hanging on too, we know that the highest stress times really are October and then December and then March. Like right before these breaks is when you're pretty tired. Like I tell my kids, if you think spring break is for the kids, you got it wrong. And so that when we can take those things and we can put them in those sorts of intervals, I think it helps just to sort of stretch people out a bit more.
Okay.
So like I said, I think we saw less of it this year. Yes, 100%. It's the level of commitment that people had. If you were going to quit, you would have quit earlier. But then also the way that we were able to span it out.
Is that data that we'd be able to see?
I think I can run that up in terms of just resignations. Yeah. In terms of certified teachers, you'll see it happens less. It happens more often with other staff members.
So is it,
So support staff,
okay.
occasionally exempt or administrators.
So it's not primarily educator, the actual classroom teacher.
Yeah, can we get data on certified staff? for
Sure.
resignation?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do think we should consider all staff because we are looking at a retention stipend that addresses more than just certified.
100%.
So if PECTA is sent Monday at 5, I'll just call preferences, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Admin will send flexibility and clarity on ESER 3 versus 2. And then data on mid-year resignations.
I do have a follow-up question, more as something that we could come to the table with for next year. If it was approved out of ESSER 3, is it possible to continue the stipend in the 2023-2024 school year?
Knowing that you're seeing something on ADE that's contradicting my understanding of it, I don't want to answer that question right now, just because let me get that clarified
Yeah,
from this
absolutely.
evening.
Okay. All right, so then we are moving on to our proposal 2, which is HECTA is proposing to collaborate with the Phoenix Elementary School District to commit to setting aside ESSER funds for the purpose of providing a one-time $3,000 payment to all certified staff at the end of the 2021-2022 school year, prorated for educators contracted mid-year. And our rationale for this being that this year has been very, very unique and very, very difficult as teachers are navigating multiple things, which
So, we sought out personal anecdotal evidence as to what we were seeing happen across campus. And so we do have a few here we do have some data points, supporting kind of why we're coming with this. And so to begin, staff offered services to quarantined and in-person students. Educators went above and beyond their contracted duties to allow the district to keep schools open for learning by offering simultaneous in-person and remote learning options. Staff have covered for many days when teaching staff and administration were sick, absent, took leave of absences, or had resigned. The suicide risk scales mid-year were double what they had been in previous years. In the 21-22 school year so far, 75 suicide risk scales have been reported on our mid-year report. That's just from August to December. In the 2018-2019 school year, our last school year in our buildings, 111 suicide risk scales on end of the year report, completed from August to May. Staff worked through additional trauma while dealing with sickness and deaths of loved ones. Many certified staff resigned this year due to hardships such as classroom collapsing, placing additional burden on staff who completed contracts. So far, we've counted at least 24 resignations.
And we have that here in case you would like to see it.
That number sounds right.
We currently have many vacant certified positions throughout the school. So far, what we understand is 14 plus district-wide vacancies for additional positions, including BIS, ESS, psychologists, EL interventionists, gifted teachers. Staff have taken leave of absences that have left burdens on other staff to cover their responsibilities and their classes. Many staff, in order to protect themselves, purchase higher quality PPE, so N95 masks, KF94 masks, rapid and antigen tests, as recommended by the CDC using their own funding. In order to combat learning loss, educators spent additional time prepping materials to send home to quarantine students, especially in the primary grades. Staff dealt with constantly changing information as 12 plus variants emerged throughout the year. The amount of staff vacancies throughout this district, again, just having to bear that burden. And so I know last time we spoke on this, we were trying to identify, well, I know under specifically ESSER funds or whatever grant or pot that we're able to possibly supply this 3,000, we had to focus on how do we, I think, identify it. And I mean, we have a mixture of possibilities. We have our mitigation plans that we did stray away from. So there's health concerns. We're told we can't we had to keep within our cohorts, but now we're sending teachers to other, kids to other classes. And I think we've all experienced different scenarios, but have managed to fight the good fight for our students. And so this is our way of making through one of the most difficult years we've all encountered in education. And so this is something that we will fight for.
We want to honor the resilience of our staff who took, and this is not to disparage anyone who
No.
had to leave, but we want to honor the resilience of those staff who fought through honestly one of the toughest years of our lives and continue to provide high quality education for students. And I also want to shout out, I think a lot of times when we hear this, we think it's just teachers, but Melissa is a social worker and she's been on the front lines of seeing some of the most horrific things. I can't imagine sitting through the things that she's had to sit through this year, 75 suicide risk assessments. And we're talking about children from ages 5 to 13. That's terrifying. That is a secondary trauma that I wouldn't wish on anybody.
So it was with that in mind that district administration created the $3,000 stipends they received this year. I would like to say there's more flexibility with this. There's simply not. If there was a possibility to do this in ESER 2, then that would be something to be entertained, but it can't be. I'll have to go back and double check on this ESER 3 piece, but what's been made clear to me again is that, and like we shared at the last meeting, those budgets have already been approved. If we were to try to change them in this manner, it would require a reapproval. One thing about the reapproval is the timing of it would not time out to the end of the school year. It would take several months. There's several districts that still haven't gotten approvals on their ESER 3s that they submitted months ago. And the second is the fear that as ADA, excuse me, as they more closely scrutinize the use of ESER funds, that they would not approve this, and they may actually go back and unapprove what they've already approved. So the ask, I think, is noble, and I think it's accurate, and I understand. I wish I had a better answer, but this is not something that we would be able to stomach in the ESER budget.
Okay, so if ESER funds are no longer available, and I understand, the scare of potentially losing already funded, whatever, things that you have submitted. According to the data that was provided to us, we're prepared to roll over 14% as our rainy day fund, whereas other surrounding districts are 4 to 6%. Why is ours so high then?
I think that's something we can discuss in next week's meeting. We talk about M&O because we
Okay.
talk about rainy day fund.
Okay.
That's what you're referring to?
Yes,
The
and
rollover
so,
in M&O?
with that 14% carryover, we're talking almost 8% higher, where is the probability of potentially pulling from that? And I think, we're open to see the different scenarios that we could potentially get this money from.
So to be clear then, the proposal currently says ESER
And-
retentions,
yeah.
ESER payout, excuse me.
Mhm.
You're not asking the necessary for an ESER
We
payout
would
Not
like to,
necessarily.
yeah, we are
Okay.
open-minded here.
in terms of the funding source.
In turn of the funding
Okay.
source, yes.
And potentially in terms of,
We just all want, we want to acknowledge every single person in this room, every person in this district. We have worked so hard and many of us have gone days upon days of just crying and wanting to submit our resignation letter. And, with what is going to happen in our district at the end of this school year, we are going to be losing amazing teachers. And this is also a way to honor the hard work that they put in. And I think it would speak highly of Phoenix L, honoring this last act to the teachers that have dedicated so much of their time, their mental health.
and the staff.
Yes, and again, this is to everybody within this district that we can possibly do this for.
Certified staff.
Yeah, that's it. Can we
Yeah,
just clarify that? Are we
certified.
saying
Yes,
everybody
yes.
or all?
Certified.
But not
I-
negating,
I
no one
hear
has, those haven't worked hard either, because I know, like we said, all of us have put in a lot, but specifically for certified staff.
Understandable. What it concerns it's just complicated when the proposal changes at the table.
Yeah.
Right. And so if the proposal now is changing from being ESER payout, what would be a more adequate or accurate way of describing your proposal?
Completion of contract payout.
Or stipend.
Yeah.
And we realize it would be, I think our language specifies that it would be a one-time
It would be.
payout honoring this one-time craziest year of teaching we've ever had. And learning and staffing. Want to make sure I include that.
And another major point to this is also, we're about to head into unknown waters with this new multi-age learning. And I know many of us want to take the summer to recharge and, spend time with our loved ones and maybe take a vacation since it's been a minute, and I know this could be a make it or break it of staff having to work peer or summer school. And it could be just that needed rejuvenation time so that we come in strong for this interesting year that we have ahead of us. And so again, we think that there are different aspects in which this would be a great honor to end the year with.
So I would say if PEC intends to change the proposal, we'd have to receive a formal proposal to discuss it further.
Okay.
We can make that a Friday at 5, and then that would work, I think, with the agenda for next week, because we're gonna move this into M&O. We're
Oh, yeah.
talking about M&O next week. So if it's Friday at 5,
Are we saying Monday at 5 or?
I'm sorry,
Friday
Monday
at
at
5?
5.
Okay, I just wanted to
we'll go back
verify.
last year. Monday at 5, a revised proposal was sent. We can add that to the agenda for next week.
Okay, so just to clarify, we're asking for a new proposal reflecting the changes that we've discussed at the table. Yes.
Yes.
Can I ask for some clarification within the
Absolutely.
proposal to include the eligibility for the payout as far
Mhm.
as, we're in contract season? Are we looking at this as somewhat of a retention reward payout, or are we paying out people that are leaving as well?
So our thought with that, and we didn't get into this because we knew that this was going to be amended. Our thought with that was that we would ask for the folks who are leaving us not to receive that full amount, but to instead receive a smaller amount, but still something. I think we had talked about 1,500 for folks who were leaving. To still honor that they did complete their contracts when many, 24 to be exact, did not. They could have quit mid-year and they didn't. They kept coming back for our students and for this district. I think, this district is something special to all of us, and it's what keeps us coming back year after year.
So not to pile on too many things on Monday at 5, but would also be helpful when you describe it that way is if there's any model districts you're thinking of that do that. What jumps out to me is legality of doing that. If you're completing, the same contract term with the same contract conditions, could there be a different carrot at the end of the contract rainbow that was approved in the middle of the contract? Right? If we were to do something like that for a future contract, there's a lot more flexibility. But once a contract has been received, that's where it gets a little difficult. Just knowing your networks are pretty broad and vast. You can answer questions on your phone right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we can just look at other districts who
Sure.
may have done that, and then we could do some more homework then to see, what the legality of doing that in the contract would be. So we can stretch those two things out too. I think the most important thing for 185 is the revised proposal.
Okay.
And then if possible, this Monday at 5 would be other districts or model districts, I would say. And then we can add it to the other proposals we're going to discuss next week, all of which have impacts on the M&O budget.
I should discuss the timeline with that as well, because for those not returning on contract, their eligibility for pay stops at their last payout, the balance of contract. So there wouldn't be, we're looking at a less than 7-week timeline on getting that turned around approval and trying to figure out a way to do that before it would be considered something else like gift of public funds. So,
Right.
That's something that we really need to think hard about as well with non-returning staff.
All right. Well, let's end on this positive note. So proposal 7 was approved. And in that proposal, PECTA had asked to include a minimum of 3 PECTA representatives on the district certified needs assessment committee to include either a gen ed or sped educator, a special areas educator, and then also a certified non-classroom educator or non-classroom staff member. And that was originally, we were told that maybe we would be able to get 2, but 3 might be too large of an ask. And Dr. Diaz, we really appreciate your advocacy on that. We did get 3 and we're super, super excited. This is a huge win for us. And we just really wanted to say thank you for recognizing how important that is and how much of an impact that really does make to be able to have voices in the room.
And the federal program team, expresses their thanks. I think this is very positive. I think the next step from here is to just create the language that we would actually be agreeing on. Not that we're proposing to collaborate anymore, but that here's what we agreed on.
Okay,
It could be as easy as saying there will be 3 PECTA representatives, including a gen special educator, a special areas educator, and a certified non-classified educator on the LAA integrated action planning team.
Mhm.
Yeah, to assist the application of federal funds.
okay. This would also be a Monday at 5.
Or, we got some time right now. You
Yeah, let's
said
do
you
it.
wanted to workshop at the table. We
Let's
can
do
do that.
it. Okay, let me just get that open. I didn't know where we were time wise. Surprisingly, I was not looking. Okay. Right, so we're changing, instead of PECTA is proposing to collaborate. You would take everything out from PECTA is proposing all the way up to include a minimum. And just saying there will be 3 PECTA representatives.
Or just 3 PECTA representatives would probably be the nicer way to say
Okay.
that. So 3 PECTA representatives, including a gen special educator, special areas educator, and certified non-classified educator, will serve on the LEA action planning team to assist the district with the allocation of federal funds.
Okay. That's done. I will save that and send it.
Perfect.
With that, I guess, should we move on to the deliverables?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so here's what I have for the PACTA Meet and Confer team for Monday at 5 p.m. So we will be sending the proposal 5 in 2 parts, right? The agreement and then the 5B table. And then for proposal 3, we'll be sending along information on the feedback from members as far as, are we breaking this into more payments? Are we doing 2 payments? PECTA will also be submitting a brand new proposal 2, a revised proposal 2. And then sending along also information on the legality in other model districts. And then I believe that's it. Is there anything I missed?
The preferences for proposal 3. Sending our preferences.
Yeah, that's.
That's part of the feedback.
Yes,
you need.
okay, preferences. Okay.
And then I would say for proposal 7, just send over that language that you have. Just
Yep,
so
I'll send it right now.
Okay. I think I have the same ones. Okay, so for the admin side, for proposal 3, an update on flexibility and clarity as it pertains to ESER 2 versus ESER 3. As well as data on mid-year resignations. But only certified resignations. correct?
Yes, please.
And I think we've got a light Monday for 5 on our side. Is that said right?
Yep.
Were you gonna follow up with the possibility of moving the new staff? You meant earlier?
Yes, that's what I meant by flexibility. So how early? Thanks for for clarifying. Can we also take a moment just to set a general agenda for next week?
Yes, absolutely. Next meeting, we were going to be discussing. Okay. We're also bringing, so what are the new ones we're bringing into the room? Those are all.
All centered around 1, 2, 4, and 6.
Okay. Okay.
So the piece that we'll bring is that budget picture, budget update,
Mhm.
and I'll make sure that Director Damon Norris will be able to be. It probably makes sense to start there, just to make sure that we're all on the same page with just where all those numbers
Yes.
are and what the budget picture.
Vic, so from what, Dr. Diaz, I'm sorry.
No, you
From
do it,
what
it's
I-
okay.
From what I understood on the information that you sent us the overall budget, but we were hoping also to see like teacher years experience, how long they've been in the district, and if you, are you able to provide that information within the budget salaries?
We've provided in the past, but I think we've done it through a public records request because at that level of detail, we wouldn't just be able to release it.
Okay.
Let me double check that.
Okay.
If that's the case, we would just need a public records request.
Okay, thank you.
I think the last time we may have sent that was in the 18-19, like the spring of 2019 meeting confer about the 1920 school year. And so if my memory serves correctly, it was through public records.
Okay.
But if you talk with your membership and you confirm the same thing, then and if you need help finding that form, just let me know. Okay, so for next week, the M&O budget picture, and then in no particular yet, we can clarify this as the week goes on. Proposals 2, 1, well, a new proposal 2,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and then 1, 4, and 6. Okay, so 5 will stay tabled for more than 1 week, and I think, well, 5B in all likelihood will.
5B
we've
tabled,
probably-
and we'll come back with refined language for 5A.
So we'll
Great.
present 5 as well that day.
So do you want us to represent
5A
5A?
on Wednesday.
We might be able to just do that over email. Like I said,
Okay.
I think that we're, with the contingency language and with that half of it, I think we're there.
Okay.
So I think we could do that over email. To bring 5B into it just might be too many things on one agenda. So
Okay. And then Dr. Diaz, is it easier for you to receive emails from my personal email or from my school email? I wasn't sure. So I've sent from both and I just didn't know if maybe like my personal emails go to your like spam box.
that is explaining why every message is repeated twice. I've kind of wondered myself.
Yeah, I
like,
send you 2
is there a
messages.
glitch in my email? It doesn't matter.
Okay.
We can use district communications to conduct this business. There's nothing that prohibits that.
Okay. Great. Well, then I will send it from district email and you will have 1 email from you. Great. Well, then I guess we will, is there anything else that we need to discuss? Or are we good to close out the meeting?
I'm good on our side.
All right, great. You want to close it up?
Oh my
Diana?
gosh,
It is. for you.
Okay, oh my goodness. So we are adjourning this meeting at 5:12. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Shut it down.